younger members of the bar, and ladies and gentlemen. आज़ादी और संविधान का एक अटूट रिश्ता है। और रिश्ता कैसे बना? रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर जी ने कहा, हम आज़ादी पाते हैं जब हम अपने जीवित रहने के अधिकार का पूरा मूल्य चुका देते हैं। तो आज़ादी तो मिल गई। 15 अगस्त 2023 को बीत गया है दिन। अब कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन ले आ गया। तो आज समय ये है जब हम अपने जीवित रहने के अधिकार का पूरा मूल्य चुकाते हैं। और मूल्य कैसे चुकाएं? अपना उत्तरदायित्व निभाते। परसों मैं संविधान दिवस पर अमर उजाला पढ़ रहा था। अमर उजाला में एक बहुत सुंदर कविता मैंने पढ़ी, हनलेंदु शुक्ला ने, उनका नाम है हनलेंदु शुक्ला ने कविता लिखी है संविधान पे। तो 4 शब्द हैं तो आपके साथ में शेयर करता हूँ। उन्होंने लिखा है, मैं भारत का संविधान हूँ। वो है मैं भारत का संविधान हूँ, तुमको राह दिखाता हूँ, पथ की सारी बारीकी को बारीकी से सिखलाता हूँ, पथ की सारी बारीकी को बारीकी से सिखलाता हूँ, उलझे न भारत का कोई सदा जतन यह करता हूँ, रातों के अंधकार में भी मैं दीपक सदा जलाता हूँ, मैं भारत का संविधान हूँ, तुमको राह दिखाता हूँ, मौलिक अधिकार दिए तुमको जीवन सहज बनाने को, कर्तव्यों का लेखा सौंपा है आदर्श न्याय गढ़ जाने को, संविधानिक उपचारों का प्रतिमान तुम्हें दे डाला है, सारी शक्ति दे डाली है तुमको भारत को स्वर्ग बनाने को, मौलिक अधिकार दिए तुमको जीवन सहज बनाने को। लेकिन मन घायल होता है जब कोई भूखा मरता है, आंखें नदियां हो जाती तब जब दूध बिना बच्चा रोता है, समता देखकर सोचा था अब अंतर नहीं कहीं होगा, पर दिल छलनी होता है जब कोई अवसर होता है, आंखें नदियां हो जाती है जब दूध बिना बच्चा रोता है। एकता, अखंडता, संप्रभुता की बात तुम्हें सिखलाता हूँ, पंथ निरपेक्षता का सच्चा पथ तुमको बतलाता हूँ, उन्नति के अध्याय सभी एकीकृत कर मैं लाया हूँ, इस महाग्रंथ का मूल मंत्र मैं तुमको आज पढ़ाता हूँ, मैं भारत का संविधान हूँ, तुमको राह दिखाता हूँ। In 1866, there was a woman by the name of Cornelia Surabji. Cornelia Surabji did her graduation from the then Bombay University. She studied law at Oxford. She wanted to come back to India and improve the lot of the Parda machine women. I thought I must mention this because as I was looking at the audience, I said to myself, how different our society is today from when Cornelia Surabji entered the legal field. She was one, and she was denied the opportunity to be one, because she was denied entry into the legal profession. So she did her LLB from Bombay University after returning from Oxford, but she couldn't get entry to the Bombay bar. So she goes to Allahabad and she appears for the pleader's examination in Allahabad. Parsi woman, going to the UK, coming back, not able to practice in Mumbai, goes to Allahabad, appears for the pleader's examination, all to gain entry. But now looking around at this audience today, I see not just a sprinkling of women, not just one woman, not just a sprinkling of women, but predominantly the voice of the women, which is now appearing in the emerging Supreme Court of today and the Supreme Court Bar Association of today. But do we take this for granted? Is this an accident? The other day when we were celebrating Constitution Day, we had judges, we had chief justices from across Africa, from the global south. While I was talking to them in the chief justices conclave, the law ministers spoke to the ministers in the ministers conclave. And I was listening to each one of them from the Ivory Coast, from Botswana, from Ghana, from Eswatini, of course from our own neighborhood, Nepal, Bangladesh. And I said to myself, how blessed are we as Indian citizens? As I started to hear the stories which emerged from different states in Africa, I said to myself, how truly blessed and lucky are we to be a part of this nation and to be a part of this profession, the Supreme Court Bar. And it is important that we don't take it lightly. It's so very often that you take what you have so lightly because we get used to what we have. We get used to the comforts of home. We get used to the love of home. We get used to the love of friends, the friendship at the bar, the camaraderie at the bar. So very often, when you get things not on a platter, there are so many of you who have not got things on a platter, but they have had to struggle for where they are today. But when you get things which become a part of your daily life, you often take them for granted. Just as we take our rights, our entitlements for granted. But it is important that we look around us, in the world around us. It is important that we look around in the world around us, around our immediate neighborhood, beyond our own nation, to realize how indeed lucky we are to be born as Indian citizens at this time, when the Constitution itself approaches the 75th year, and so does the Supreme Court in a very short while from now. This morning, we have about 2,000 plus employees of the Supreme Court of India, and all these employees launched on a blood donation drive. I was there early morning when the first batch of 6 employees gave blood. I think that reflected in a great deal, and very senior doctors from the All India Institute of Medical Sciences came to the Supreme Court to oversee the process. I invited some of them to come to my court, and I was delighted to see some of the very senior heads of departments of All India Institute of Medical Sciences sitting in the first row observing what happens in the Supreme Court of India. And we had some very contested matters. But I must tell you something very interesting. Sometime back, one of my colleagues had an attack of dengue. We needed a blood transfusion. But we drew on the credit of the blood which was given by our employees during the last blood donation camp to draw on the credit which was available to us as a court to ensure that my colleague came back to normalcy very quickly by the blood transfusion. So this is again a reminder that all of us are bound together in this cycle of existence. None of us in that sense is different from the other. None of us stands alone. Just as we sit together in this auditorium, cramped up in small seats, but that is an indicator to us, that's a symbol of our existence. We all exist together. And what the Constitution tells us is that we either survive or we perish together. Just yesterday, I had to deal with a very fraud case. The Supreme Court deals with fraud cases every day. Some courts have more than their share of fraud cases. And there are some times, as elections come, the number of fraud cases tend to increase in the court. And we as judges realize it. After elections take place, things settle down. As elections come closer and closer, the court becomes a site for political engagement. That's the truth of our society. I'm not looking at it with any value judgment. So we had this very fraught case which was going on where Dr. Abhishek Singhi was on one side, and the Solicitor General of India was on the other side. And after they concluded their arguments, I turned to my two colleagues and I said, let's dictate the judgment on the spot, because that lends a degree of transparency. As I was dictating the judgment, I saw a very interesting sight. The Solicitor General got up from his seat, walked up to where Dr. Singhvi was sitting. They were both involved in a chat to their heart's content. For a moment, I thought that they were joking about me. I thought perhaps they are saying, "Ye chief, itna kyun likh raha hai? Ya likha raha hai." Whatever they were speaking, maybe they were just speaking about what they had had for lunch, or maybe they were cutting a joke or two about us judges. But that reminds you, the reason why I'm telling you this story is because that gives you the essential nature of our profession. It's a profession of diversity. It's a profession of diversity in terms of gender, which I just mentioned, and increasingly diverse in terms of gender. It's a profession which is very diverse in terms of caste, in terms of region. The one hallmark of the Supreme Court bar is that all of us, judges or lawyers, have come from different parts of the country, in search of a better livelihood for us. But in the process of giving each one of us a better livelihood, we are also engaged in providing a better existence to our fellow citizens. And that's the big power which all of you command as lawyers. The ability to change the lives of Indian citizens for the better. The ability not to accept any doctrine as a given doctrine. The ability to ask questions. The ability not to be tied down to one dogma. And the ability to realize that though we may have as lawyers, or you may have as your lawyers, different faiths, different ways of dressing, different food preferences, different ideologies, you are essentially one. And that is what really our attire reminds us. Our attire, which is otherwise so sober, so unenterprising, black and white every morning, it reminds us that the similarity of our attire is a symbol of the common existence which we share. And I believe that it is important for all of us as members of the bar to preserve this tradition for the future. These are traditions which take a long time in building, but take only a moment to sacrifice. So it's for all of you as senior members of the bar to pass on these stories, these messages to the younger members of the bar. When I speak to my law clerks, I have quite a few of them, both in the Center for Research and Planning and in my own office, I make it a point to share stories. And the reason why I share stories is that it is in these stories that we convey what we have learned from our own lives. So I'll appeal to the senior members of the bar to share their stories, as Meghwal ji shared just a short while ago, as Mr. Harish Agarwala always shares. So it's important to share these stories, because it is in the stories which we discuss with each other that we realize the essence of our existence. It is for us to make the legal profession broad-based and inclusive, to ensure that the legal profession is broad-based and inclusive. By doing small things, by people who are in charge of their chambers, being receptive to people coming from all walks of life. Not for those from Maharashtra only to encourage Maharashtrians, or those from Orissa to only encourage Odiyas, or those from UP to only encourage UPites, or those from Tamil Nadu to only encourage Tamils. It's for us to ensure that we truly make our chambers broad-based and inclusive. Encourage people with different ideas and different thoughts to come into our lives. In doing so, we not merely discharge our duties to the profession, but we also enrich our own lives. Encourage young lawyers to join judicial service. I think it's important that the Supreme Court Bar Association, SCORA, the Bar Council of India, that we ensure that we encourage young lawyers to fan out in diverse directions. Practice in the Supreme Court Bar is only one option for young lawyers. Some of them will attain excellence, others may decide to join judicial service. Create that opportunity, create that space. But above all, I think it's important that on a day where we celebrate the Constitution, that we learn to discharge our duties to the cause of justice. Our duty to the cause of justice ranks much higher than the success or failure in individual cases. Success and failure in individual cases is a matter which is transient. All of us as members of the bar won a lot, lost a lot, because winning and losing is really not in the hands of lawyers. Sometimes it can be even in the hands of an erratic judge. But that is part of the human element that pervades the legal profession. And remember, ultimately, that it is if you support the institution of justice, which is to ensure that you support the independence of your own judiciary, that the judiciary can truly be able to discharge its duties. Don't expect the judiciary to do something contrary to what you are giving to the judiciary. If you are not giving to the judiciary its own sense of due, how do you expect them to discharge their own obligations towards society? Because your judges come from you and they return to you. They are not distinct from you. So you have a very important opportunity and a responsibility, both to yourselves. Obviously, we are here for the betterment of our own existence, for our families, for our future, but we are also here for the betterment of our profession, and through the betterment of our profession to serve the cause of justice, and to ensure that the other side of the profession, the judges who are duty bound to act in aid of justice, continue to do so. You have to not merely protect your judges, but you have to hold them to account as well. And we have done that when we found, as young lawyers, that there was a straying away from the path of justice. So I think I've spoken a few words of my own on the occasion of the Constitution Day by telling you the link between freedom and the Constitution. I began by telling you two different extremes, what Hon'ble Shukla in the present said, and what Rabindranath Tagore said so many years ago about the link between freedom and our own conscience. So I'm sure that the members of the bar will continue to pursue the cause of freedom while also retaining your own consciences. Very easy. It's very easy to forsake your conscience, but keep that light within you burning bright. Namaste.